Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today from Istanbul is Professor Nazan Maksudyan, who teaches at Istanbul Kemerburgas University and whose research focuses on children and youth in the Ottoman lands, as she calls them, not just the Ottoman Empire. Nazan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You focus on a topic that is dear to my heart, but also so specific to Armenia-Turkey relations, because after all, at least the last 100 years of these relations have been defined by the memories of children. And so your topic is hugely important for us. Tell us what you study. You haven't come up to 1915 yet. You're still studying the period right before that. Is that right?
Well, the thing is, my main PhD research was on the 19th century, and I stopped at the First World War. But now my recent research is on the First World War, which also includes the 1915. What I find important is that I think by focusing on different characters in history, we can write alternative histories. And I think children has been silenced for a long time, and they need to be given voice.
How do you do that from a traditional historical perspective? Those of us who've done oral history, okay, we've talked to 60-year-olds, 80-year-olds who have the memories of children, but that's not what you're doing. How do you do this research?
Yeah, I mean, sources are a big problem because children are traditionally silent characters. What can you study about them? Well, what I found was at least certain petitions, certain life stories, you know, court records. Well, in most of the cases, these are troubled kids, so happy stories, happy childhood memories, happy childhood stories do not easily, appear in the archives, in the historical record. But I try to do at least make their lives visible, how to see their experiences from their own perspectives. For instance, I wrote about abandoned babies, those who were left in churchyards or mosques. And in this case, I at least try to find what happened to them, where they were left, what happened afterwards. Even if it wasn't their voice, it was kind of following the trajectory of their lives.
You also talk about that category of children who are adopted either voluntarily or forcibly. Tell us about that category of children and the research there.
Yeah, in my research, I mostly focused on girls, adopted girls. These are called besleme in Turkish, meaning like feeding, it means. So the young kids who were fed at home, kind of. Apparently, in the Ottoman Empire, this was a very established procedure where the families with poorer backgrounds would give their children to wealthier families to be fed and to work in these environments as mostly maid servants. Most of them were also sexually abused, but in theory, they were domestic servants. So, and in the 20th century, of course, the issue becomes even more widespread with the First World War and the 1915 Armenian genocide. At this circumstance, there are lots of orphaned or destitute girls around, and there seems to be a competition of abduction, adoption, early marriage, whatever you call it. So this becomes another politicized issue where children were taken away and people were claiming possession of the girls from different areas, from different groups in the empire.
We will link to your longer talk on the issue of children in the Ottoman Empire. Do you find that this research is of interest only to the minority populations of the Ottoman Empire and Turkey, or also to the majority population?
Oh, I think it's important for the entire Republic of Turkey and also the republics around. What I study is the history from the perspective of children and youth. And apparently 20th century, those who were children at the beginning of the 20th century ended up building new nation states and became the leaders, politicians, intellectuals of the upcoming generation. So I think it's very important that all have this memory of the war, memory of destitution, genocide, and all that happened at the early part of the 20th century. And I think this is very much overlooked, and we do not take into account as much as we should that all these founders of the republics, not only the Republic of Turkey, but the neighboring countries as well, they were children during the First World War, and they experienced the genocide at 1915. So I think this is a very important memory all around the region, and we need to take into account this while writing our histories of the period.
Besleme, was that the term?
Yeah.
Is it possible to assume that given the Besleme tradition, custom, that after 1915, that the children who were kept, adopted, abused, were even somehow the adoptive families and adults in that relationship even somehow thought they were doing something good, perhaps?
Yes, I mean, in the, let's say, in cultural terms, this is considered to be a philanthropic act because you're taking in a poor child, boy or a girl, but usually girls, and you're feeding this child. So this is thought to be an act of giving, and this is why it doesn't turn into an employer-employee relationship. So you don't have to pay the child or the parents. You just need to feed the child and then use his or her labor. So this is considered as benevolence.
Since we're on a roll, let me ask you one last question about the Yenicheris.
Yeah.
You know, the popular wisdom in the Armenian world is these were the young boys now abducted and trained. Is that how it is?
Well, there are different versions of the system of devshirme. So this is called child levy. In some places, children were forcefully taken away, but in the later centuries, when the population of the empire realized that these boys' life chances were much more higher than typical villagers, in some villages, in some of the levy cases, the families were volunteering to give away their boys because they were thinking, oh, we're going to have someone at the palace who will in turn become somebody and will come and give us, booties, kind of. So it was in some cases really voluntary, and families were competing with one another, trying to show that, well, our boy is more clever, much more strong, you have to take him, kind of thing. So it's double-edged. But in other cases, families were not willing to give away their sons, but they were forcefully taken. So again, we need to look at the experiences. In some cases, the experience was very sad. In other cases, the boy was willing to go, the family was willing to go, and they were reunited some 20 years later, but still they were happy to make that choice.
So we're talking about the Janissaries, the young, almost like the Republican Guard, huh? Is that a fair comparison? The Royal Guard. And were these boys who were taken or who were sent mostly from minorities again, or from the population at large?
Well, minority would be a little bit of an anachronistic term. They were non-Muslims. So Muslim children were not accepted into this practice because it was it's not slavery, but still you take away a boy, etc. This was a practice among non-Muslim communities. They were taken to the court, to the Ottoman palace, and they were then converted to Islam.
It's really interesting to see about all of these various customs from the perspective of a researcher, when from the perspective of those of us who see ourselves as subjects of this process, have heard so many stories, disturbing stories, and we hope to continue to talk to you about all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I also encounter very disturbing stories. I mean, working on children, as I said, brings you all those sad stories from the archives, from the memoirs, because we somehow tend to keep those bad memories somewhere. But as someone who is trying to bring forth the possibility of agency, bring forth the possibility of making politics, I'm trying to find good stories as well, trying to say that while children were abused, raped, abducted, this happened, that happened, but somehow in some cases they opened up their chances, they made something different, and there were also happy children within all this historical landscape as well.
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult sentence to explain to a whole lot of people, but as I said, I hope we continue to talk to you about all of this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for following us on CivilNet.